Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me. So I just wanted to share with you my eyeshadow palette collection as promised in my makeup collection and storage video. So I do have some blush palettes and some highlighter palettes and things like that. I'm not going to include those here because this is just going to be about eyeshadow palettes. If you do want to see a future video on highlighters or, blush collection or something like that, please go ahead and let me know and I'll be happy to do that for you. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So here is my first section of my palette collection. I actually have 3 different places that I keep my palettes, so we'll go through this one first. These are probably the ones for the most part that get the most use, although there are some in my second container that get quite a bit of use as well. So we'll go ahead and just start going through these. First one is the Modern Renaissance palette by Anastasia. This is, of course, the new one that everyone is raving about, and it's totally worth the hype. Beautiful warm tone palette. Next, I have the Urban Decay Naked 1 palette. This is actually my first neutral eyeshadow palette, high-end neutral eyeshadow palette. And it's, as you can see, it has a lot of love. I don't use it too much anymore because it is probably quite a bit past the expiration date, but it is a great neutral palette. Next, I have the Too Faced Semi-Sweet Chocolate Bar palette. This was my first chocolate bar palette. It's a beautiful neutral palette. It's got a good mix of cool and warm tones, so I think it's one that can work for everyone. Of course, it smells like chocolate, which is awesome. Next palette I have here is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Self-Made palette. This is probably one of my very favorite palettes. I actually like this a little bit better than the Modern Renaissance, but unfortunately it was limited edition, so I don't think you can get it anymore. Next palette I have here is the Kat Von D Shade and Light, which is an all matte neutral eyeshadow palette. I'm not particularly keen on this one. As you can see, it's barely used. I actually bought it in January and I think I've used it like maybe 2 or 3 times. I just don't feel like the shadows blend as well as like the Naked Basics, and it's harder to hold because it's so big. So I just prefer the Urban Decay Naked Basics palettes for my mattes. Next, I have the Too Faced Chocolate Bonbons palette. This is my favorite of the Too Faced Chocolate Bar palettes, mainly because I have very fair, cool toned skin, and I think this is a very cool toned palette. It also has those great pops of colors with the pinks and then the purple in there. And that is the last for that back row. So now moving on to this row. And again, I do have some blush and highlighter palettes, so I'm just going to show you the eyeshadow palettes. This is the Urban Decay Gwen Stefani palette, which you can now get for $25, which is an amazing deal. I absolutely love this palette. Of all of the Urban Decay Naked palettes, if you were to include this one, this is my favorite. It has just such a great mix of mattes and shimmers and the pops of color at the bottom, and all of these shades except for this one are really good. So love this palette. And the next one here is the Tartelette in Bloom. This is a wonderful neutral palette. Also like very versatile, I think, for everyone because you have cool tone, kind of neutral, and then more warm and rosy. So I really like that. And it does smell like vanilla or chocolate or something. So I really like that palette. This is the last eyeshadow palette in that row. And this is my Buxom Custom palette. And these are the shades that I picked for it. They're really nice, really buttery, really blendable, easy to work with, last all day. But for some reason, I don't use this palette that much, which is weird because I picked out the colors and I like all the colors. I don't reach for it that much. I think it's because of the packaging. There's nothing wrong with the packaging, but it's not like super attractive to me, I guess. And I tend to reach for things that I like the packaging of. So packaging does matter to me. Okay, next, these are like my favorite palettes probably of all time. If I had to go down to, one palette for the rest of my life, it would probably be one of these. I love them equally. These are the Urban Decay Naked Basics palettes. So the first one is the original. And as you can see, it's very well loved. I've hit pan on a few of the shades there. Just wonderful for traveling, wonderful for natural matte looks. This is the Naked 2 Basics. Also beautiful. The only reason I haven't hit as much pan in this one is because it's a newer palette. Next one I have here is the Peanut Butter and Jelly palette by Too Faced. Beautiful warm tone palette, very on-trend colors. Smells like peanut butter and chocolate. This is a contour thing. This is just like little single eyeshadows that I took out of an Urban Decay book of shadows. So That's what that is. And then I have this, this Tarte Tease palette. I haven't really used this that much. I got it for the 30% off, but it's a nice little companion palette or a nice little travel palette. It's got shimmer and matte, and it's good and, you know, nice and neutral. And then I have this Too Faced Romantic Eye, which they actually discontinued. Hopefully they'll bring it back. I know this was a really popular eyeshadow palette, but it's got some really beautiful colors in here. So I do really like this palette, and I still use that, even though I got it a couple of years ago. Next one I have is a Too Faced Sugar Pop palette. I bought this fairly recently when Too Faced was doing 50% off on their sale stuff. So this is what it looks like. Beautiful, fun colors for summer. You can even do neutral looks, surprisingly, with this palette. So I love that. Next one here is the Ciate London Fun palette, which is super fun. This is something I just got, I think, in May or June. And this is a really fun little palette. It's very compact, and you've got everything you need. You have things for a neutral look, and you also have those colors, so you can do a really fun, colorful look. And it's really a great little palette and not too expensive. So I really like this. And that is it for this box of palettes. We'll move on to the next one. Okay, and on to the next box of palettes. First, I have my Anastasia Glow Kit, so that's not eyeshadow, so we're not going to go through that. And then I have my Urban Decay Alice Through the Looking Glass palette. And there it is. Beautiful. I actually had to force myself to stop using this after using it almost exclusively for like a month, because I absolutely adore this palette. And if you haven't gotten it but you're interested in it, I would actually recommend waiting, because I've noticed this trend of Urban Decay limited edition palettes going on sale a few months after they're released. So I think that this might go on sale at some point, but it is a really, really great palette. Next, I have this Laura Geller Beauty. Excuse all the fingerprints on there. This is the Cream Glaze Deluxe in Desert Dusk. And this is a really beautiful eyeshadow palette. The consistency of these shadows is just so creamy and just lasts all day. They're really, really beautiful. Next, I have my Tarte Rainforest of the Sea palette, which I got this year. And those are some really, really beautiful colors. And what's great about this particular palette is that you don't have to wear a primer with these shadows. Like, they will seriously stay on all day, and they look very vibrant and gorgeous on the eyes. And then this is a bronzer. This is one of Tarte's round palettes. This is the Showstopper palette. I really like these all-in-one face palettes because they have the bronzer and the highlighter, the cheeks, and the eyes. So they are good for traveling. I honestly haven't used this one a ton. I bought it because I liked the Rainforest After Dark one so much. But I mean, it's a really nice palette. I just don't use it that much. I have a contour palette. And then here is my Rainforest After Dark. This was my first Tarte palette that I ever bought. And this is a really nice palette. As you can see, it's pretty well loved. The next palette I have is another Urban Decay limited edition palette. This is from Oz. This is the Glinda palette. This is one of my favorite Urban Decay palettes that they ever came out with. I just absolutely love this shade right here, as well as the pink and then the aura, which they made permanent. These are all great shadows, and I have definitely gotten a lot of use out of this palette, and I bought it when it was 50% off. And then last three in here are these Too Faced from holiday last year. These are actually, I'm not going to show you all of them because obviously you can't get them anymore anyway, but they're really, really nice little palettes. The shadows are really good in here, but I just haven't used them a whole lot because there's no mirror, and I like to have a mirror in my palettes. So once again, you know, that's kind of a packaging thing. If the packaging doesn't work for me, then, you know, I don't use it. Okay, so that's the end of that little palette collection. I have these little double duty beauty palettes from Tarte. So I have both of them. They're really nice little kind of all-in-one palettes, just really easy to come up with a look with these. This is the Cool Toned, you know, Sultry Star Power palette. I love the little quotes on the front. And then I also have the Courage palette. And that's what that one looks like. It's a bit more warm toned. Beautiful little palettes there. Okay, and finally we'll move on to this one, which is what I call my palette graveyard. It's kind of sad, but these are palettes that I like never reach for. So in the back here, I have my Vice 4 palette, and this one I do occasionally reach for, but you know, not that much. It's something that I bought when it was on sale. How many of you guys do that? You buy things because they're on sale and then you barely ever use them. I am totally guilty of that. With this palette, I did use it for a lot, for about a month when I purchased it, but I prefer my Alice Through the Looking Glass palette when I want colors from Urban Decay. And then I have these two Tarte palettes from the QVC holiday collection a couple years ago. You know, it was the QVC Today's Special Value price and then like 30% off of that on Tarte's website. So I got a bunch of other stuff with that kit and I totally don't regret purchasing it, but the shadows in here are not all that great. Next I have my Naked Urban Decay On the Run palette. And I have used all of the other stuff in here, as you can see, so I definitely got my money's worth out of it because I did, once again, this is something else that I purchased on sale. So, but I don't really use like these products so much. The highlighter is really nice. A couple of the shadows are nice, but the blush and bronzer don't really work for my skin color, so I just don't use this palette all that much. This was another, you know, I bought it because it was on sale sort of thing. And also I like the packaging, but I like never use it because this is, I'm sorry, I didn't say what it was. This is the Tarte Golden Days and Sultry Nights palette. I have all of these colors. So I have all these colors like elsewhere in my collection, which is just why I don't use it very much. And this gold shade is not very good. The rest of them are actually really good, but I just don't use it that much. Next I have this little Smashbox palette, which I used a little bit when I first got it, but it's a really good palette, but I just don't use it that much. It's got 3 cheek products and then 8 shadows, so it's a nice little palette, but I used it a little bit for traveling, but other than that I haven't really used it. Next I got this little 4-pan e.l.f. palette that is just terrible. It was free, so I probably should just throw it away because these are just terrible shadows. And then next I have this Tarte palette. This was from a QVC Today's Special Value with a bunch of other stuff that I have completely used up. And so that, I definitely got my money out of that one as well. And I used this a lot when I first purchased it. It's a really pretty palette. Very nice neutral palette, and you've got kind of everything you need. This is the Be Your Own Tartist. I forgot to mention the name. Next palette I have is this Z palette, and these are all like shadows from old Urban Decay kits. And then I have this Cargo Eye Contour Shadow Palette. I used this like twice. I didn't like the blendability of the shadows. I should have returned it to Ulta, but I just didn't want to because I was lazy. So next I have this Too Faced Chocolate Bar Palette. I just don't use this because the colors don't really work for me. They're very warm. I feel like they're really dark. They go on me darker than they look in the pan, so I just don't use this very much. Next palette in here is also from a Christmas kit. This is the Lorac Queen Eyeshadow Palette. It came with 4 other palettes which I gave away as, or 3 other palettes that I gave away as gifts, and I kept this one. These are really, really nice shadows, but I just have these elsewhere in my collection that I use more, so I don't reach for this one all that much, but it is a really nice palette. And then I'm not going to go ahead and open these, but these are 2 Smashbox Christmas palettes from last year's Christmas kit. Once again, these are good shadows, good products. I just, you know, I don't use them that much. I think, once again, it's kind of a packaging thing. I don't like this just black plastic packaging. It's not very interesting to me. So that's what they look like. But yeah, those are the last of my palettes. Okay, so those are all of my eyeshadow palettes, including my palette graveyard of the palettes that I don't use or barely ever use. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please let me know what your favorite palettes are. If you have any questions or comments, of course, leave them below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.